Okay. So here's how this works. A, B, C, D, or E, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to deconstruct some of these questions, and then I'm going to stop talking, and you're going to answer first, and then I might encourage one of you to deconstruct the question. So I might like say, hey, why did you think it was this, right? Okay, so first thing, which of the following is not a standard design principle when designing systems in AWS? So, by the way, where would you look if you wanted to see what design principles they're operating off of? Like what would be the quickest way out of the things we just looked at? Do you know? So if you want to see the ones they're looking at, just go look at the exam guide. Think parallel, loose coupling, right? Disposability of resources. That'll all actually be listed just in the exam guide. You'll see like the general statements around, right? And if you can't find it there, you might need to go actually look at either the skill builder class or the student guide if you have access to that. But I noticed that a bunch of you put C, which is servers, not services. Are you saying that AWS would prefer that you use their higher level services over the low level servers? Is that what I'm hearing? I think that's what I'm hearing. That's good. As a general rule of thumb, you're absolutely right. If it comes down to whether or not you could roll your own with a virtual machine or use a database service, every single time Amazon's going to say, I really would like for you to use our services, right? Amazon's trying to eat the world basically by having you like offload your operational overhead to them. Yeah, they want your money, but they also just want your business, right? Because they think this is how businesses succeed, and they've got like what $50 billion worth of yeses that are telling them that they're in the right direction. So, yeah. Disposable resources, so no more fixed servers. Designing for failure, absolutely. Design for what's going to happen when things go wrong. Loose coupling, that's a big part of it as well. They don't want tight coupling. If a component fails, they don't want it to drag the other component down. If a component fails, we just want it to go down. Unlike when, AWS goes down. Just kidding. I'm sure not most of the internet is down at this point, right? So let's check it out, because maybe I'm just making things up, but it is actually servers, not services, right? So remember these concepts from the exam guide? They were all in the exam guide that we looked at for this certification. Those pieces were in there. Here are the references if you want to see them, including just cloud best practices, which is one of their kind of white papers. All right. Billing and pricing. So I'm going to deconstruct this one too. Which of the following purchase options for EC2 offers the most significant discount compared to just on-demand retail pricing to process steady state workloads that will be running continuously for a year? Brian, were you going to say something? It sounded like you were going to say something. Okay. Just so you know, dedicated instances are the most expensive way to use AWS. Definitely not going to be that, right? And by the way, that's a security and licensing option, so no. Then we've got standard, scheduled, and convertible reserved instances, which might sound like they're made up, and they're not, actually. Standard reserve instances are just standard 1 or 3 year reservations. They offer the deepest discount. Scheduled reservations probably offer the next deepest discount, because instead of doing a 24/7 reservation, you just do it scheduled for a period of time. And then convertible reservations, reserved instances, are the most flexible of the reservation types. And because of that flexibility, AWS is not going to give you as deep of a discount. So the most significant discount should be standard reserve instances for steady state for a year. But let's check, because maybe I'm just making it up. All those descriptions, by the way, right here. Standard reservation, right? Convertible reservation. I don't think they have scheduled reservation. Where is that? Oh, it's scheduled RIs. This allows you to choose like once a month, Monday through Friday from 8 to 8, that kind of thing. Scheduled reservations are not as deep discounted as the standard reservations. Here are the references if you need them, including a cheat sheet if you want to dive into EC2. All right, we're going to keep going. Right now, if you're not super uncomfortable feeling like there's no way you're ever going to learn this and pass the exam, then you're in the wrong class. Because if you're feeling confident right now, then you're probably ready to take the exam, actually. So right now, you should feel like, oh my God, this feels like a lot. Okay, so stay with me. We're starting our baby steps. We're getting uncomfortable. Now, this is just a straight up security question that doesn't even really have anything with AWS. What compliance requirement has AWS achieved that allows the handling of medical information? Come on, if we ever gone to a doctor's office, you've seen it even on the sign-in sheet where they're like, well, for this compliance, we got to do this, right? So even if you're not in the security field, hopefully someone has said, well, we can't share your medical records with you or your parents or your best friend because of this, right? Good. I see that sparked a firestorm of responses. Now, of course, John's going to have to show you the shared responsibility model, which says basically if you can log in, configure it, or know where it's at, you have to patch it and support it and defend it. If AWS is the only one who knows where it's at and they're the only ones who can log into it, then they have to defend it, right? So just keep that in mind. The rest of this, as far as like PCI DSS, which has to do with credit cards, and of course the system and organization control reports, just know that if it's HIPAA, it's going to be health related. If it's credit card industry related, it's probably going to be PCI DSS. The rest of this, just know that Amazon probably has it. Okay. Which of the following is true about the AWS cost and usage report? Okay. So we're going to look at this as a strategy for just a second. First of all, we know that the cost and usage report is a billing report, right? Now, the question is, what out of the 5 tools that you could use, what is the cost and usage report used for? Well, here's a good summary. The cost and usage report is used when you want incredible granularity around your bill because you want to feed it to another system, either third party or another AWS system. That's really it. That's what the cost and usage report is used for, sometimes referred to as CUR. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, never mind. See, you are. So, you know, so if it's just really a spreadsheet or a data dump of granular costs, helping you visualize, understand, and manage your costs over a time via an intuitive interface, it's not really what a data dump does. So it's really not this one. Provides you with granular data about your costs and usage. Hey, I just said that. Check. Lets you set custom costs and usage budgets that alert you when thresholds are exceeded. Doesn't sound like just a granular detailed data dump. Provides a dashboard. We can just stop right there. It doesn't really, no, doesn't have a dashboard. Allows you to load your cost and usage information into Athena, Redshift, and QuickSight.
No, I guess not. Okay.
Brian, I'm going to mute you for just a second. There we go. So it sounds like this last one kind of makes sense, right? Now, that requires you to know that the cost and usage report is just a granular data dump that's used by third parties. Budgets, by the way, is used to set budget alerts. Cost Explorer has an intuitive interface to explore costs. But if you don't know the tools, it's going to be really hard. But that's why you're taking the practice exam, so you can get comfortable with it. Okay. All right, there we are. Any questions about anything thus far? Did you notice the strategy there about noticing the service and then just kind of filtering out the answers? Okay, let's keep going. All right, let's talk about billing and pricing. You have a EC2, Amazon Linux EC2 instance that ran for 1 hour and 30 minutes. How will AWS bill you in terms of usage? Here's the question. Do you know how AWS is going to bill you for 1 hour and 30 minutes of a Linux EC2 instance? That's really the question. So the question is, you can see from the answers, is it hourly or second? Is it hourly or second? You can tell from the questions that you have to make those two distinctions. By the way, if you don't know this, it's obvious, it's per second billing for this because it's not a licensed operating system. So non-licensed operating systems that are not like Mac OS, although Windows Server is an exception to this, but if it's like RHEL or SUSE, or sorry, SLES, not SUSE, SLES, yeah, which is SUSE. If it's a licensed operating system, they have to do per hour billing, because Apple's not going to like let them get away with charging per second, because you can't start something for 5 seconds. So it's going to be per second billing for any non like commercial operating system except for Windows, which is also per second. I don't know why Microsoft allowed that, but it's kind of cool actually. So then what's going to happen is that you now know it's per second, because why? Because Michael Forster just told you. And then are you going to get billed for an hour and 29 minutes or an hour and 30 minutes? In what world would you pay for 3 hours worth of electricity, but they're only going to bill you 2 hours and 59 minutes? So in my brain, I'm sitting there thinking, I think they're going to charge you for the full hour and a half, because it's per second billing. So I can't even think of a reason why they wouldn't, but maybe I'm wrong, right? In this case, that's true, right? So per second billing. Now, EC2 usage is billed in 1 second increments with a minimum of 60 seconds, meaning you're going to pay for at least 60 seconds worth of stuff, right? So just know, and they're not really calling this out here, but Windows instances, licensed Unix instances like RHEL and SUSE, again, are per hour. Oh, and Mac, by the way, if you run a Mac instance, it's a 6 hour minimum. So if you run it for 5 seconds, you pay for 6 hours. Yeah. I'm just going to start a Mac server anyway, unless you're doing development on it, which makes sense to me. Okay. Okay, I'm going to let you read this one, and then I want you to post your answers into chat. Okay. All right. So seems like this is kind of like how do you do this, right? So when it comes to equipment expenditures, what's the advantage of cloud computing? So what's interesting here is that you can scale and manage the number of resources. That's actually true. Is that related to equipment expenditures? Amazon introduces cost reductions each year in their services. That's pretty much also true. How does that relate to equipment expenditures? Devices are continuously secured and monitored. That has nothing to do with expenditures. Uses the cheapest possible equipment. First of all, Amazon would never put that in their own exam, so we know that's not the right answer. So as most of you kind of like guess, it's either going to be A or B, right? So what's interesting is that we usually buy equipment when we want to scale, right? Services. So I'm going to take a little guess here, because I see some A's and some B's. Let's see if A is actually the right answer, or did they want something else? Ah, look at that. They actually wanted B here for this, right? So what this means is that AWS, and this relates, by the way, to economies of scale, which is one of the 6 advantages of cloud computing from their perspective. So when it comes to equipment expenditures, what they're saying is that every time that they basically get better or have to buy more hardware, right? They literally are saying that when we have to get bigger, we get more efficient at the cost per unit. And so you're literally going to save money, right? You're going to save money because as we buy more equipment expenditures, you're going to like see us basically pass that savings back on to you, right? So, and it does say cost reductions and equipment expenditures. So Chris, technically you're right. That one could be a little fuzzy though, right? Especially as it relates to like scale. But in this particular case, what they're talking about is that they're saying an advantage here is as we spend more money, you save money, which is kind of self-serving, but they do say that a lot. All right. This one will peel back a little bit. Due to a high number of visitors, many customers are timing out on our website, which is running in an elastic auto-scaling group of EC2 virtual machines. They are behind an elastic load balancer. Notice the acronym usage, by the way. Upon checking, the auto-scaling group has stopped adding new instances to the group. If you're familiar with Trusted Advisor, which you should be at least a little bit, which of the following Trusted Advisor categories are going to give you more insight on the issue? Okay, let's see your answers. What are the reasons why the auto-scaling group has stopped adding new instances? Okay, so I see C and E there. I see A and C there. I see just E. Chris, I see A and C, A and E. Well, A definitely seems to be a point of consensus. And it seems like either A and C and A or E. It looks like A and E is actually taking the lead. So let's see if it's A and E, right? So let's check it out, see what it says. Now, just so you know, it's definitely service limits. There was no question there, but performance was really the other one that they were looking for, right? And here's why. Trusted Advisor includes a list of checks in the following categories. So we got cost optimization, security, fault tolerance, performance, and then service limits, right? Since we're experiencing high usage, by the way, first of all, they could be underperforming because they're not big enough boxes. So you might need to check the performance because you might need to do some vertical scaling because you're already doing horizontal scaling. In an auto scaling group, by the way, it's easy to upsize boxes without causing a disruption, right? You also might have hit your limit on the number of virtual machines you can run in a region. I think the total is like 1900. So, but you know, like Heroku one's like 200,000 virtual machines a day. So go figure that. So really that's the problem, because the problem isn't fault tolerance. It's not resiliency and redundancy. It's not a security problem. It's not even a costing problem. It's I'm getting timeouts on my website because I'm not performing fast enough. And I might getting choked out on that because of the service limits, right? So when you read the question, there's no issue with redundancy, fault tolerance, security, or cost optimization. The main issue is that people are timing out because the website's not responding fast enough. Now, could it be other causes? Sure. But initially, you should check and see if the machines are overloaded. Okay. Good. All right. So which of the following do you need programmatically to interact with your AWS environment? Notice this is a security question. Okay. So everyone's agreeing that it's access keys. I see some people saying an account, username, and password, right? Here's my question for you. Do you have to use an SDK in order to access the API in AWS? Chris, were you pre-answering my question? Is that what you're doing? Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people put E and B, right? But do you actually need an SDK? No, an SDK is nice to have, but is absolutely like, is it required? But that might still be the answer. Maybe they're looking for something different. And that is actually what they're looking for, right? Is that they're looking for access keys and they're looking for an SDK. But I got to tell you, you don't actually need an SDK to interact with it. So technically that's not like 100% accurate. But in this case, that's what they wanted. You want an SDK and you want access keys. Once you have the access keys, by the way, you don't actually need the account username and password, because you don't need the account username and password is used to access what exactly? Is that used to access the console? So using an account username and password isn't actually going to help you programmatically. You only use the account username and password for the web console, which is not programmatically. Okay. So which of the following do you need to programmatically interact with AWS? You absolutely need access keys. You technically don't need an SDK, but that is the other answer that's available. The management console, username, password, and Lambda are actually all incorrect. Good. Okay. Which AWS service can monitor the compliance status of your AWS resource against a set of compliance guidelines? It is the horribly named service here that is actually used to check against compliance. What's the answer? Good. I see a bunch of plugs for AWS config. By the way, up to this point in time, you should have gotten most of these questions wrong. So if you're feeling like defeated because you got the questions wrong, you should have gotten most of these questions wrong at this point, right? If you've gotten them right, then good for you. You might be ready to take the exam. Let's check this, by the way. And it is AWS config. AWS config is kind of confusing because it kind of like indicates that you can do configuration. That's not really what it does. It actually just checks against the configuration against whatever rule sets you put in place. So it actually checks the status and or state of your configuration. Okay. All right. Read this one through and then we're going to shift over a little bit. Which of the following does AWS automatically handle for you? We got to select two of these. Does it provide a web application firewall, which is a layer 7 firewall to protect your public endpoints? Does it make sure your data is safely kept and replicated between availability zones? Does it introduce updates and patches for your EC2 guest operating system? Does it introduce updates and patches to your EC2 hypervisors, which are the underlying hosts, right? Or does it secure AWS data centers from environmental hazards, right? Okay. So first of all, what does AWS handle for you automatically? Well, one, they do provide firewalls, but they don't provide web application firewalls. Those are paid for resources. Data is safely kept, they do that, but they don't replicate data between availability zones, right? They just don't. Updates and patches to EC2 guest operating systems, they do not touch your operating system unless you give them permission to do so. By default, they don't do anything. Now, introducing patches to hypervisors, yeah, they're required to do that. So that's all them. Secure data centers from environmental hazards, yeah, that's pretty much their job, right? So it should be these last two items, right? That says patches to hypervisors and environmental. So this is part of the shared responsibility model. If you launch it, you have to patch it. If you put data in there, you're the one responsible for like making sure it's in a safe place and it's replicated if necessary. If you want a web application firewall for your public endpoints, that's going to be you. You're required to start that. Okay. Okay. All right. This is about computing models, right? I'm going to let you just read this one and answer it at your leisure. What level does EC2 operate? Is it an IaaS, a PaaS, a SaaS, or a DB?
You're muted. You're muted.
Thank you. EC2 instances are the lowest level. So this is infrastructure as a service. Thank you, Chris. So, it's not RDS, which is platform as a service, and it's not DynamoDB, which is software as a service. This is infrastructure as a service, right? So that's the computing model. I don't know that I've ever seen a DB as a service, which is kind of a legitimate label, but I don't think the industry uses that, right? So there we go. Note that as you go up to SaaS, you are responsible for less and less, and AWS is responsible for more and more. So good to know. Okay. All right, next one, question number 13. Customers choosing the best support plan. And yes, they do actually ask you to know the support plans. Which support plan includes a dedicated technical account manager? What's your answer? Good. Yeah, you are required actually to, you have to have an enterprise support level in order to get a TAM. They actually offered this new, like, I think it's like enterprise onboarding, this new support level that just came out, I think with reInvent. But these are the 4 basic ones. Basic is free, costs you nothing. Developers like $100 a year. Business and enterprise are a percentage of your total spend, or like a minimum of $15,000, whichever is, you know, highest. So if you want a TAM, which I've had actually twice in my like in the last 5 years, oh, it was spectacular. AWS is really good at that. And plus you get to talk to the product team, so it's like really cool. But enterprise is the right answer if you want a TAM. Here's a little thing. Here's a couple of things that you need to know. If you want full access to Trusted Advisor, which is like a consultant, like an automated consultant for your account, you have to have either business or enterprise. If you want a TAM, you have to have enterprise. If you want an hour of production response time, you want Amazon to, you know, help you resolve and respond to your problem within an hour, then you need either business or enterprise. If you want 15 minutes for critical systems, you have to have an enterprise, right? So just know that there's only a few things you need to know about the difference between the support plans. Who gives you access to Trusted Advisor? Who can get you an hour of production response time? Who can get you 15 minutes of critical, like, response time, like mission critical system downtime? And then of course, how do you get a TAM? Again, enterprise, right? Okay. Do note also that enterprise includes things like a concierge support team and free training and lots of stuff like that. All right, I'm gonna let you read this one and just figure out how, like, where do you have to spread your servers to account for DR, right? Good. So in order to account, if there's like an outage, much like the one we're experiencing now, at the very least, Amazon's going to recommend that, you know, you at least like spread things into different availability zones, right? If it's a DR, they might even go so far and say, look, we want you to do it on a regional basis. Did I click check? Yeah. But for most of our use cases, being in different availability zones in the same region is going to be totally fine. Being in 2 different cities, which is really what a region kind of is, to be in 2 different cities, that's not necessarily required unless you have very stringent DR requirements, which, you know, people do. Good. All right. Next, a MariaDB RDS database, which is a managed service, is known to have high memory consumption during peak hours, which slows down the performance of the application. What cost-effective change can you reintroduce to resolve the issue if the database is handling write-intensive operations? Now, this one could be a little tricksy. First of all, just know that RDS, right? The relational database service does support read replicas, right? So you can actually spin off another EC2 instance for your RDS, or an RDS instance, right? Switching to DynamoDB, that could be useful, but might require some architecting, which may be super costly. Distributing the workload by running multiple instances, that's going to cause that. First of all, it's not going to be cost effective. That's going to cause a lot of challenges. And then scaling the instance vertically to a higher memory capacity, that actually might be pretty good, right? And it might be more cost effective to do that than it is to run read replicas. But I think it depends on how much memory you add to the system. So I see that a bunch of people, like some people put A, some people put D. So I see 3 things for A. So let's see if A is the answer, right? And actually in this case it is, right? Scale it, vertically scale it. Remember, it's relatively hard to actually scale write operations on a relational database unless you're doing clustering. With a NoSQL database, you can do that all day long. So really your only answer, if write is your constraint, is to actually upsize it vertically, right? Give it more memory, relieve the pressure off of it, especially if the write intensive operations are the ones that are hurting it. I'm not saying that adding a read replica wouldn't lessen the burden of read operations and take it off the system, but it also adds the burden of replication. So to solve the problem for certain, upscaling vertically is going to be the answer. Scale it, as the man said. Okay. As an AWS customer, what offering do you naturally inherit from AWS after you sign up? Like, what do you get? This is a little bit of a marketing question, just so you know. So if you're a little confused, right? When you sign up and create an account, what do you get? Like that's basically it. Like what benefit do you think Amazon thinks they're giving to you, right? Well, remember, you sign up for an account and automatically you inherit all the best that AWS has to offer around how to run infrastructure, how to run virtual machines, how to run object storage, right? So some of this is like all the responsibilities. Well, you probably already had those, so you didn't get those from AWS. All the hardware and software you provision, no, you're not going to get in the cloud. You don't earn it, right? All the data you store in, well, you already had the data. That's why you had the ability to give it to AWS to run it. So I'm thinking maybe C is the answer, right? Is that you basically get everything that Amazon has to offer about how to best practice the run of these servers and run the infrastructure and whatnot.
So why is that listed under security?
You know what, Greg? I really don't know, actually. Good thing is that you don't actually see this on the security category.
Right, on the test you don't, but I was kind of curious. That's why it threw me, because I'm looking at number 4 where it says security, but it's not the right answer. But I was just kind of curious why they put that as a security category when it technically really isn't. It comes in security stuff, but
yeah, probably because from their perspective, like, and I would agree with this, is that they are first and foremost a security company, like right after a cloud company, because they're constantly getting attacked and hacked. And so all of their best practices around, security, architecture, operational processes all apply. They don't really call that out. So, that's why I'm like, I don't know why they have this under security, but you do inherit all of their security operational enhancements, right? All of their security best practices, their security team. So, but that's my soft answer. I don't have a good one. All right. Okay, so what does AWS do when a storage device reaches the end of its lifespan with AWS? Man, some of these answers are fun. All right. Yeah, so I mean, I think this makes sense to most of us, right? If they just wipe the drive and send it back to the manufacturer, yeah, it doesn't sound very secure. Actually, doesn't. Wipe the device and dispose of it? What do you mean dispose of it? Like you just throw it in the trash? Maybe they archive the device in case customers request their data again. No. God, can you imagine what a nightmare that would be? No. Yeah, Stanley. Good point. So they actually follow a pretty strict, decommissioning process, including the grinding of the hard drives in question. They're just ground up and destroyed, right? So don't send it back, right? They use the things listed in the NIST 888, right? It's not removed from AWS control until it has basically been ground into parts. That's basically what they do with the hard drives. So none of that other stuff applies. It's all about strict compliance with that data. Okay, last one, and then we're going to take a 20-minute break. What type of EVS volume is recommended for most general workloads and also is usable as a boot volume? Share your answers. Bonus points if you can short code the latest generation, like technical label, not just C, but how do we refer to that inside the console? Pretty good, Jonathan. The latest generation is GP3, but GP2 counts. All right. So, with that discussion, it kind of like cements it that general purpose SSD is pretty much what we're looking for, right? That makes sense for most workloads. Plus, it can be used as a boot volume. Cold mechanical hard drives and throughput optimized mechanical hard drives cannot be used as a boot volume. Okay. Needs to be either provisioned IOPS or general purpose SSD. In this case, general workloads is general purpose SSD. It is useful to know how Amazon likes to label these hard drives. Small random IO operations are going to be SSDs. Large sequential IO operations are going to be mechanical. SSDs are going to be ideal for transactional workloads, but if you want a large streaming workload or infrequently accessed data, then a mechanical hard drive is going to be your friend. So just know the solid state drives can be used as a boot volume. You cannot use mechanical drives as a boot volume. We've left that era behind. Can you imagine putting a mechanical drive back in your laptop? Well, they're not going to do it for their machines either. When they first started, everybody was using mechanical drives. Ever since Amazon switched over to SSDs, everything has been amazing. So from a virtual machine perspective. All right. So it's 2:50. So just for learning's sake, we're going to take at least a 20-minute break. So let's just take 20 minutes. So we'll come back at 10 after 3. I'll put a little timer up. So just please step away from computer, grab some water, just like give your subconscious and your conscious mind a break for a second, okay? So we'll see you in exactly 20 minutes. I'll put a little timer up for you. All right. Who's next for rounds 2 and 3 of our questions? Okay. Anything popping in anybody's mind this far? Anything that we need to dive into, talk about?
The one thing, Michael, I don't know if, unless I missed it at the beginning, but I've seen it before. When they go in to do the practice exams to prepare for the, there's a bunch of different modes. And if I missed that earlier on, my apologies.
Yeah, we talked about it. The review modes versus the time mode versus the
So
section
we're-
base.
Okay,
We're
fine.
only doing review mode. Yeah, we talked about it.
and that's all when they practice for the exam. That's all we should be using.
That's it. Just the review mode. Don't really need anything else.
Okay.
Okay. All right, pardon me just 1 second. All right. So let's go on to the next question and we'll keep on going. Okay. Which of the following actions does not affect costs when using Amazon S3? Okay, I got a B thus far. Anybody else weighing in? Okay. So got a bunch of C's now. All right. So here's the interesting thing. If you want to read something out of AWS, like you're making an API call, any API calls, unless it's for the service doesn't support it, typically it's going to charge you, right? So getting a read request, which is what a GET request is, that's typically going to charge you. If you move an object out of your S3 bucket to another bucket, that's you pulling something out, moving into another object, that's also, right, going to charge you. Choosing standard IA instead of one zone IA, that's going to affect costs. Here's the funky thing. Amazon will let you put data into Amazon all day long. They will charge you nothing. But if you try to pull that data out, you know, kind of like sticking your hand into a trap, but except it's not a trap because Amazon's not trying to do that to you, right? But you know, you stick your hand in to get it out, right? So if you pull data out, they're typically going to charge you. Cool thing though, if there's certain services they're not going to charge you for, but in general, data transfer costs for uploading objects into S3 buckets, they typically are not going to charge you for that. So no transfer charges for inputting data, transfer charges for extricating data. Okay. So you just got to remember choosing the standards versus ones that moving objects around, anything that has you manipulating the service from a data storage standpoint is typically going to cost you, except for the actual transfer of the data into the system. Okay. Okay. Okay, so this next question is kind of interesting because it's like, which service allows you to patch your Windows EC2 instances, your virtual machines, but you don't have to log into them. That's what RDP is, right? You either SSH or RDP into it. Stanley, by the way, delete is an API call. So while they'll charge you for the API call, obviously you'll get the storage costs back, right? Just to mention that. So if you deleted 1 terabyte file, you don't have to pay for that terabyte anymore, right? All right, so which of these services will allow you to patch Windows EC2 instances? So this is just straight up service knowledge. What they're looking for here is just this pure service that does patching. That's what they're looking for. Sounds like there's some consensus here. Systems manager's job is to manage systems, usually fleets of systems. So, and it has like a patch manager in there that actually does patches, right? You can actually set up patch baselines, right? Patch Windows, patch Linux. I think you can patch Mac OS. I think that's now an option as well. So you can use this for patching. Code deploy, by the way, is used for deploying code. CloudFormation is to actually provision cloud. And the simple workflow service, which I think it's still around, is basically allows you to create workflow steps. That's what it does. And by the way, that can include like human steps as well, like wait for human intervention, stuff like that. An employee is asking for access to your S3 buckets. What should be the level of access that you should provide to them? All right, so before you answer this question, tell me what security principle Amazon is testing you on here. What are they testing you on? Someone asks for access, but they don't specify what level of access. What do you give them?
Privilege.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Least privilege. Okay, so based on the fact that you want to give them the least amount of privileges possible, what's the answer? Well, remember, you are talking to a human being, right? So, because you also want to give them exactly what they need for the task. The principle of least privilege says, well, don't blindly just give them the minimum that you think is right. Ask them what they're trying to accomplish. What type of access do they require? And then provide those permissions, right? There you go.
Michael, that's so bogus, though. We don't ask the user what they require. That's usually approved by a supervisor or manager.
Right, but all that is indirect, Brian. At that point, they've told their manager what level of access they require, and hopefully the manager has said, "Oh, what do you need exactly? Oh, you're working on this project? Well, then let me grant you project permissions." So while it's true that you might not indirectly be in line for that, someone should be asking them and approving what their minimum level of access is. So.
Bad question. I mean, you'd get an administrator in trouble if you just went by what the user said they need. That's so wrong.
Oh, are you saying the employees are going to ask for more than what they need? That sounds so weird. Yeah. Well, you just think of the idealized AWS version, right? In an ideal world, you can trust your employees and you go and ask them questions and they tell you what you need and it doesn't sound weird. And you're like, oh, you know what? Okay, that sounds good. So we'll grant you access. All of this may work differently in the real world. By the way, just so you know, they added a new pillar to the well-architected framework called sustainability at reInvent last week. So don't worry, you won't see this up here. So which of these well-architected pillars, which are part of the well-architected framework, stresses the importance of selecting the most appropriate and the right number of resource types for your requirements? I see some kind of like, we're kind of a little all over the place. I see some Cs, I see some 2 Bs, I see 3 Bs actually. Operational excellence. Let's take a gander at this and see if we can figure it out, right? So in this particular case, cost optimization is really about kind of like controlling money, right? So what we're looking for is like, are you choosing the right type, right? The right number, like the most appropriate and the right number of resources. Now, I feel like that question is actually pretty vague, honestly. I'm not sure that I would get that one right, just to be right up front about it, right? And only because I'd probably go back and forth between operational excellence, performance efficiency, and cost optimization, because really the question is just asking about precision, right? Are you being precise? Which precision has impacts against performance efficiency, cost optimization, operational excellence. And this is just one of those cases where I don't have a great strategy for how to clarify this question because the question is vague, right? It's not like they're asking like, what's the most appropriate licensing type and the right number of resources to meet your performance requirements. Like they're not clarifying with those letters. So honestly, it's hard to know. But just to say this, I say that because I don't have the well-architected frameworks like memorized like the back of my hand, even though I've been working with them for years. If you look though at the cost optimization framework, it does actually have that phrase in it. I actually looked this up because like, how are you supposed to know that this is the case? It actually does say making sure you're selecting the most appropriate and the right number of resources based on whatever level you're operating at. So I literally am going to write this off to a very vague question that's really hard to differentiate. If you even look at the answers, even John's answers are soft a little bit, right? Performance efficiency, because this focuses on this, including the right resource types and sizes. I'm sorry, what? John, what are the right, isn't the right resource types the same as appropriate? So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time trying to figure this out. Let's just write that off to a vague question. Let's move on. Sometimes that's just what happens. Okay, which of the following controls, so this is about security, right? Does the customer fully inherit from AWS based on the shared responsibility model? Now notice it says, which of the following controls does the customer fully inherit from AWS? That might be a qualifier, actually. Right? And this question is also funkily worded, funkily, I just made that up. If you're not familiar with security terminology, but they're basically saying what controls actually fall under AWS's responsibility. It seems like some of you like figure that out, right? In other words, which of these are actually AWS's responsibility? All right. Let's check it out. In other words, when you are not responsible because you inherit it from somebody else, that means that AWS is taking care of it for you. So you don't have to worry about those controls because you're inheriting those controls from AWS. When we talk about the entire stack, that is very much security terminology, right? So what happens here is that what they're saying is that which of the following controls do you inherit from AWS because AWS is fully handling it? That's based on the shared responsibility model. Now that language is going to throw you off if you haven't seen it before, but if you've ever done any security attestations or whatnot, you would see it. But who has, right? So just know that if it says, what controls are you inheriting? It basically says, what security concerns is AWS taking care of that I get the benefit from? That's what this is asking. That's why I was clarifying it. This question is saying, what's Amazon taking care of for you? What are you inheriting from Amazon? This question has shown up on the Cloud Practitioner exam, by the way. So Amazon's going to take care of all the physical environmental controls. You know why? You don't know where their data center is. And if you did, you can't get into it. And if you got into it, you wouldn't be able to access the cages or the systems, right? So inheriting controls means that you are benefiting from them doing something. What is it that you're benefiting from? Just to say this also, awareness and training is always the customer's responsibility. Configuration management and patch management, if you launch the operating systems, that's going to be your responsibility as well. Otherwise, AWS is going to handle it, but you'll never fully inherit those from AWS. Not really. So that was only a confusing question because we didn't understand the language, right? So, but now you've seen it, so now you know. When they say what controls you're inheriting from AWS, they're basically saying, what is AWS taking care of for you? Okay. How is expense shifted when you move from buying hardware in a traditional data center to doing a monthly service expenditure with AWS? What's the shift? This is an industry standard discussion about anything involving moving from hardware to like a software as a service line item. What is the phrase? Good, I see 3 C's and then an A. Now, this is where Amazon really throws you, okay? It used to be that the phrase they would use is trade CapEx for OpEx. So all of you who put A into your answers, about a year ago, 2 years ago, that was technically correct. And so if you took Cloud Practitioner and said, hey, I want to trade capital expense for operational expense, you would be correct because that is technically accurate as far as an industry standard thing goes, right? But as far as how they define the 6 advantages of cloud inside Cloud Practitioner, it explicitly says capital expense is traded for variable expense because people were freaking out because their bills were going up and down every month. So the answer, unfortunately, is C. So OpEx is the broadly, and actually Kendra just beat me to the punch. OpEx is definitely the more broadly like industry language, right? But remember, this isn't an industry test. This is Amazon's test. And Amazon says CapEx trade for variable expense, right? But just know they were using industry language up until like a year or two ago. So you just have to speak their language, right? When in Rome, right? If we were at Hogwarts, we'd all be drinking butterbeer. Remember, this is the trivia exam. Of course, I just said that. Maybe I'm wrong. And they're like, they changed it back. No, I'm just kidding. I actually just saw it on the slides for the Cloud Practitioner. All right, so remember this. It's not OpEx. It's not CapEx for OpEx, right? It's capital expenditure for variable expenditure. Now that's going to be the 6 pillars cheat sheet. Okay. Auto scaling, which is a service that adds or removes EC2 virtual machines from a group on demand, is an implementation of which of the AWS best practices? Yeah, the ability to scale up and scale down and be flexible, also known as elastic, dead on, right? Implementing elasticity. See, they do actually give you some straightforward ones every once in a while, right? Now, remember, you've seen some of these before, right? The designing for failure, loose coupling or decoupling, It'll implement elasticity, think parallel, right? Disposable resources, services, not servers, right? We've seen some of that. I would say that elasticity tends to be along a single dimension, and flexibility, is the ability to like kind of adapt. But I mean, kind of like if you were to draw a Venn diagram, I think they all kind of step on each other, Stanley, right? Elasticity is scalability because it is horizontal scale, right? So yes, they're all similar. Let's see some specifics about auto scaling. All right, a software engineer is having trouble migrating and configuring a licensed application on an EC2 instance. And so what they're having trouble with is they're having trouble getting this set up on AWS, right? Which of the following options would you recommend so they could quickly get their licensed app up and running in AWS? And just so you know, because it's a licensed application, you can assume there's a third-party vendor. If you were going to start up something from a third-party vendor in AWS, which of these services would make sense? Good. So I threw some clues your way, right? If you want to get access to like a third-party vendor, let's say you want to use Checkpoint or Fortinet or Juniper or Cisco or whatnot, there's only one place to go to get official branded third-party licensed applications from those vendors that run natively in the cloud because they've already been set up. And that's the AWS marketplace. So in a sense, unless they say something horrible around the word AWS marketplace, that's what I'm going to look for here. The Docker, converting things to a Docker image is not necessarily trivial. It can go quickly, but it's not trivial. Using the discovery service, the discovery service just discovers things. It doesn't actually do migrations. You could use the server migration service or the data center migration service or the mainframe migration service if you want to do that. And then setting up a VPN connection from our local, that whole sentence, by the way, is just insane. Just because we have a connection to AWS doesn't mean our work is now running in the cloud. So even through elimination, probably this would be the right answer. So I think these were probably easy to eliminate. You would have to know that the discovery service is actually truly, for the first time, labeled correctly. It is actually just a discovery service. It's not a migration service. So remember, the marketplace is a curated digital catalog that allows you to get third-party software and services. By the way, you pay for not only the resources it starts, but you pay for the licensing as well. So just be mindful, right? Okay. Which of these is not part of AWS's global infrastructure? This should be a beach ball, so take a look.
A.
All right, seeing A's, seeing the A's come in, seeing the votes come in, and it looks like A is the classic winner, right? By the way, what are placement groups used for? So can anyone tell me what placement groups are used for? Use case. So placement groups are actually ways of controlling the placement of EC2 instances. So you can put them all together, you can spread them all apart, you can create little interesting clusters. They call that cluster placement, right? So just know that's all done on top of AWS's infrastructure, right? The rest of these are availability zones, regions, and edge locations are all part of AWS's global infrastructure. By the way, there are two other things that are probably going to start showing up on the exam that are part of AWS's global infrastructure. That's local zones and what they call wavelength zones, also known as 5G zones. But what you just really need to know for today is that AZs, regions, and edge locations are your physical locations. So placement groups, definitely not part of it. Yeah, placement groups, just a logical grouping. Okay. You have a customized EC2 instance running your latest web application. How can you create an exact copy of a virtual machine running in one instance? How do you copy it over to another region? What do you do? What do we do here, right? Now we know it's probably going to involve some kind of copy and or backup of some type. But we want to make sure it's bootable, right? So how do we make bootable copies? Well, bootable copies are basically, machine images, right? Stanley, a non-golden AMI is a AMI that is no longer like plain, widely used AMI. So a golden AMI has all your patches in it and all your kind of common software. And typically it doesn't have custom software installed in it so that other projects can use it. So you can have AMIs that are not the gold AMI. They're not the one published with all the patches and security concerns in it. And those AMIs are usually on a per project basis, but they're all based off the gold AMI, the golden AMI, right? So that's what that means. It's not made of gold, unfortunately. So anyway, that kind of gives away the answer, right? Is that we're talking about golden AMIs. Creating backups of your EBS volumes and copying them to another region doesn't make them bootable. I'm not saying you can't make hard drives out of them, but you have to convert it to an AMI to really make it bootable, right? And then creating a load balancer with an auto-scaling group linked between two regions. You can't put an auto-scaling group between two regions. Load balancers and auto-scaling groups are confined to a region, as are most services, actually. And then there's no way to do this in AWS if you do it manually. That used to be true. But now you actually can just make an AMI out of it, copy the AMI over to the region, and then boot a machine off of that Amazon machine image. That's what an AMI is. And so they'll do the acronym game with you a lot. Do you know what an AMI is, right? It's a bootable machine image. That's all it is. If you are tasked to create a lightweight WordPress site in AWS without having to install the package on your own, which of these platform as a service solutions will allow you to easily get WordPress up and running on a server like that? Now, I just want to note a few things. It says lightweight WordPress site. So what's going to support that?
Oh, Lightsail.
Yeah. Right. I mean, most people don't use Lightsail, by the way, because it's not enterprise class per se. But remember in the old days when you could just go ask for a server with a fixed, set of hardware and bandwidth and whatnot and just pay a flat price for it? Well, that's what Lightsail is. It's just like single server requests, usually for things like single server, dual server websites. So could be wrong. Maybe they're asking for something else, but Lightsail, right? Notice it looks like this. So you just select your platform, your OS, and then you can apply a blueprint. Do you want to put the lamp stack on it? Do you want to do a multi-site WordPress site? Whatever you're looking for. So. Sometimes my Roomba just like starts running around in the background. Like, who's standing behind me? What's going on over here? Anyway, where can the customer view their reserved instance usage for the past month? In other words, where can you go to see how many reservations you've used? What have you used? Remember, you pay for reservations no matter what. So I see a bunch of you put B, right? So you can't actually go to the Build console and look at Cost Explorer that will allow you to see your EC2 instances and your use of reservations, right? Reservations, reserved instances, RIs, they all mean the same thing, okay? So in your dashboard, you can come in here and see your spends. And it kind of looks like that, actually. S3 is a storage service. EC2 is virtual machines. Organizations is a meta account service that lets you manage multiple accounts the same way. So that's definitely not going to be it. Okay. You're implementing CI/CD in your cloud architecture. Which service is going to allow you to set up a delivery tool chain for coding, building, testing, and deploying your application? Which of these is just going to let you set up your entire development and continuous delivery tool chain, the whole thing? Now, I know what you all were thinking because you wrote it in the chat. You were thinking, hey, it's got to be C, right? And that's not the answer. Here's where they threw you off in case you weren't paying attention, because you may have missed it. You're right that code commit, code build, not necessarily testing, and code deploy can all be managed by code pipeline. But here's the thing where they threw you off, right? Is they said not only your continuous delivery chain, but your entire development and continuous delivery tool chain. And that was probably because you didn't know about CodeStar, right? You didn't know what CodeStar was, right? CodeStar allows you to set up everything, including your IDE and everything else, including code pipeline and all of the services code pipeline touch in one fell swoop. Think of this as the elastic beanstalk of the code services. Elastic Beanstalk allows you to set up best practice architectures using EC2, but it asks you all the questions. Do you want a database? Do you want a load balancer? Do you want auto scaling? CodeStar will do the same thing. What language are you using? What's your delivery pipeline look like? What services do you want to use? Do you want to hook into Code Commit? Do you want to use GitHub? CodeStar is a wizard for setting all that up for you, basically, right? So it allows you to manage all of your software development activities in one place. It also allows your team to work together. It does project management. It's powered, by the way, by Atlassian, because I know you all missed Jira, right? I know you love Jira and you really love the search function inside of Confluence. So I know you're missing all that. So here you go. You've got it, because you're like, man, I haven't touched the Confluence search function in a while. So just know that CodeStar is a wizard for the code services. No one reacted to my search comment about Jira and Confluence. I've always had such interesting interactions with Jira and Confluence when it comes to search. By the way, notice you can edit your source code with a variety of different like sources, but including Cloud9, which is Amazon's like in-cloud IDE, right? Okay. So remember, entire development continuous delivery tool chain, that's going to be CodeStar. If they just said, hey, I need to set up basically a CI/CD pipeline for coding, building, and testing and deploying, then it would be just pipeline. But this whole thing is going to be CodeStar. Okay. By the way, just mention this, we're gonna keep going for another like 10, 15 minutes or so. Then we're gonna take a shorter break, right? Just like 10 minutes. And then we're gonna finish out the day. I just wanna give your brains a rest here, okay? All right, which storage service is gonna offer faster disk read and write performance and provide temporary block level storage for your instance? Without even looking at the answers, ideally you have an idea. Because when does AWS ever offer temporary storage? And the answer is that instant storage is considered to be the only temporary storage in the entire ecosystem. Everything else is persistent storage, not temporary storage. So, yeah. So if they're talking about instant storage, they're talking about those little disks that are attached to the physical hosts that the virtual machine is sitting on. So if we look at this, by the way, which I think we touched on earlier before, is that he didn't have a picture this time. This is storage, by the way, instant storage that comes with your EC2 instance for free. And the reason it's free is because it's sitting on a piece of hardware, that virtual machine, and it's using those disks. If that host or virtual machine crashes, all that data is gone because you're just going to start up on another virtual machine. You might say to me, Michael, that sounds insane. Why would I use instant storage? And the answer is just you're not supposed to use instant storage. You can use it as a scratch drive or for like a temporary system, but not for a permanent system. Okay. Not getting any questions, so I'm just going to keep going. All right, I'm going to let you just read this one. We're going to start rolling into you just digesting it. All right, Stanley, I'm going to ask you on this one. How did you know it was the well-architected framework?
Yeah, so it has nothing to do with the Scrum, definitely.
Okay, good. Keep going.
And I'm not sure what the cloud adoption framework is.
Okay.
And then this is definitely not serverless, so like I just use the process of elimination, but like in addition to that, I also need the answer. So
Okay, good. So you knew the answer and you could exclude it. So that's perfect,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah.
you know sometimes that's great to be able to go in reverse, right? To knock something out. This is the one, by the way, that said it got a new pillar this week, last week, right? Because it's now operational excellence, security, reliability, performance efficiency, cost optimization, and now sustainability. So good work there, Stanley. That's perfect. Okay, the serverless application model, by the way, the SAM model is a kind of like model for how you can deploy serverless applications. The cloud, and by the way, it has some tooling that goes with it as well. The cloud adoption framework is then when you're doing a migration, how do you adopt cloud and like master the 6 perspectives that make up cloud? They're not going to ask you any questions on that. That's all like a pro thing, like a architecting professional. So they're not going to ask you questions on that. Probably would help if I marked it, but I didn't. All right. Good. So well-architected framework. The well-architected framework, by the way, also has a well-architected tool. Again, you don't need that until you get to associates level. Okay, which surface offers volume discounts when you do consolidated billing? So what this means, by the way, is if you have 5 accounts and they're all using 10 terabytes of something a piece, so you know, that could be terabits, right? It could be networking. If you do consolidated billing, it's going to stack all those 10 like terabytes as an example together, which means you're going to get a single bill for 50 terabytes. So instead of 5 bills of 10 terabytes, what will happen is you get a single bill, and Amazon will start tiering your price per gigabyte so it's cheaper. Because the more you use, the lower the cost per unit. Okay, Jonathan, just because I haven't heard your dulcet tones in a while, how did you know that it was S3?
Well, simple notification service doesn't necessarily make any sense in this context because that's like messages that are sent out. And I don't believe that the pricing for it, if there's any pricing component to it, has anything to do with volume. CloudTrail charges based on like number of trails created, and I don't believe has any sort of volume tier discount. And then CloudFront is like caching, and I don't think the pricing structure has anything to do with volumes, but S3 has like buckets and size of buckets. So those would be consolidated, and that would make sense.
Good, good. Okay, excellent. Yeah, so S3 is definitely the answer. I concur, by the way. Maybe I'm wrong. So yeah, you can see that is that when you go from 10, instead of getting 5 bills of 10 terabytes a piece per account, if you enable a consolidated billing account, you'll get 1 bill for 50 terabytes, which means it, instead of being charged 5 separate bills, you get 1 bill, and it's going to like stair step that up. So that's exactly dead on, right? So, and you know, there are a couple of services that will do from volume discounts. They're mainly storage services, actually. Okay. So a customer wants to further secure their network beyond security groups and network access control lists. Which of the services will provide additional security features? You know, probably worth saying like to in like a network, because since we're talking about security groups and network access control lists. Okay, so guard duty and WAF. Gotcha. All right, Brandon, do me a favor. You know, because it looked like that was right. Yeah. So tell me why you thought those were the right answer or why the others were wrong.
Um, well, so, I mean, we're talking about security. So WAF is a firewall, so I knew that. And then guard duty, I know goes out and finds secure, scans your system for security. So those are the two main ones I saw that are related to security.
Do you know what SQS is by chance?
Simple queuing service.
Right, so that does queuing. What about the single sign-on service, right? It's just really for authentication. What about the
Yeah,
key management service?
manage your access keys. So I guess that could be security.
I thought so too. I was like, yeah, it actually could be security. Oddly enough, it's not access keys it manages encryption keys.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, oh, but you know, what about KMS? That's why I qualified it and said network services earlier, because I felt like the question was a little, right? Because they actually did say in the question, it says secure as network, which this is data at rest, not data in transit. So you'd have to know the subtle distinction there, right? That KMS is actually for data at rest, not for certificates, right? So good for both. Guard duty, by the way, proactively looks for holes in your network. So it looks for holes in your network, and it actually if someone tries to do recon because they're prepping for an attack against your network, guard duty is basically the guard dog for your network for your VPC. So it doesn't do like host scanning or anything. That's Inspector that does that. And you're right, web application firewall, the WAF is a layer 7 firewall. It's the one that's not included. It's not free, actually, but these are included. So I have to pay for those. Good, Brennan. Good job. Okay. I think we verbalized most of that. Okay. Where is the best place to archive logs and other infrequently accessed files for a long time with no real strict retrieval times? Okay. Now there's a couple of very distinct words in here that we need to hone in on. What's the best place to archive logs and other infrequently accessed files for a long time with no strict retrieval times? Man, I gotta tell you, Amazon loves doing this. They'll use the word archive and then they'll say infrequently accessed. They do that a lot. The problem is that infrequently accessed negates archives. So instead of like putting into an archival service, you have to put them into an infrequently accessed service, right? Is that not the case? So if we go with Glacier, right? A lot of people put D. Here's the problem is that fits perfectly, but know that on occasion, when they say infrequently accessed files, sometimes they're talking about infrequent access. But the reason this works here is it says for a long time, and it says with no strict retrieval time. So in this case, you can retrieve it in whatever time you want to. And if you want to stick things out for a long time, you're not going to stick it in infrequent access. You're going to stick it in Glacier, right? So just be aware that if they start putting qualifiers like this on the ends, that could shift it back to Glacier. But if it doesn't have these qualifiers and it says infrequently accessed files, they might be talking about infrequent access. So just be careful. Just because it says archive doesn't mean that they don't want you to use infrequent access, right? In this case, it's perfect. Notice that the reason they said that with no strict retrieval time is that it will take anywhere from 5 to 12 hours or 3 to 5 hours, depending on whether you use standard or bulk to retrieve your files from Glacier. You can also use expedited and take 1 or 3 minutes. Oh, and they just released an instant mode of retrieval for Glacier, which is instant, like it's like less than 10 seconds. Good job on Glacier. Okay. A company is planning to use cloud to augment the resources of their on-premise data center to better serve their customers around the world. How does a company benefit from using AWS? Oh man, this looks like one of those fuzzy questions, honestly. Although honestly, the exclusion answers here are horrific, actually. So one, you don't get discounts on Amazon.com because you're using AWS. So definitely not A, like seriously, right? Replace low variable costs with CapEx expenditures. Isn't that the exact reverse of what we were just talking about a while ago? CapEx for OpEx or CapEx for variable, not this, right? Replace high or low variable costs with CapEx. So just from an exclusion standpoint, I'm like, well, it's got to be D. Anyone disagree with that? It should be fine. Let's check that out. I think they made that pretty easy, actually. Glad the answers were so easy because otherwise the question was just a little fuzzy, actually. Good. So remember, these are the 6 advantages, by the way, according to them. Trade CapEx for variable expense, benefit from massive economies of scale, stop guessing capacity, increase speed and agility, stop spending money on data centers, and then go global in minutes. Again, remember, this is AWS's perspective, which is not necessarily wrong, but it could be skewed a little bit. Okay. So let's do this. It is 3:59. It's almost 4 o'clock. Let's take a 10-minute break. and then we're going to end with a 50-minute run, right? And in that run, I'm not going to analyze any questions, right? We're just going to let you read them. And then if it's okay, I might ask that one of you like analyze the answers if it requires analysis. Okay. So let's take a 10-minute break. I'm going to put a timer up. Let's come back at 4:10 and then we'll cap out the day. Okay. All right. We're continuing on. Okay, so here we are. We got a mobile game startup. Oh, wait, I said I wasn't going to read it. You know what? I'm not going to read it. You're going to read it. Read it, and when you're ready, post your answer in the chat. Okay. See some options here. Gregory Morris, you can't choose the second one as a backup, but I hear what you're saying, right? If A is wrong, then I would choose D, right? So now here's the catch. So here's the thing. It says a mobile game startup is going to upgrade its local servers. However, locally stored data cannot be migrated due to compliance requirements. So any answer that involves the migration of data, not going to happen. But the problem is that they do want to upgrade their local servers, right? But the data itself might be a problem. So dispose of all your servers and migrate your data. That can't be the answer because data can't be migrated. Slowly migrate your web servers and data in AWS can't be the answer because you can't migrate the data. It's got to stay right there. But they still want to migrate. And I think the answer of not migrating, save up some capital, that's not the problem. Capital is not the issue. The issue is the locally stored data has a compliance requirement. So let's just run a hybrid model. Let's use some web servers, but keep the data local. Standard practice. All the AWS servers will communicate with your local data store. By the way, you can get really low levels of latency for that. So it's not like it's going to be a problem to run that between your data centers. So A, most likely the answer. Let's see. Remember, you got a key on in this. What is the reason why they can't migrate and what can't be migrated? Just that one piece, then just leave it alone, right? Okay. All right, read the answer. Go ahead and post whenever you're ready.
If you're saying things, Forrester, you're muted.
Oh, thank you. All right. So if you want to offload administrative possibilities like responsibilities from yourself, that's a great reason to use RDS over a local database, right? But let me ask you this. So, Mr. Hunt, let's ask you, Chris. Is RDS a better choice when you need full control of your SQL database? And if so, or not, why? You're on mute, Chris, if you're talking, just like I was. You may not be there. We'll come back around. So just so you know, you when you need full control over your database, RDS is not going to be your answer because you can't log into the operating system for RDS. So you can't mess with the database as much as you can, right? When you need a fast network connection to your local web servers, that's definitely not even applicable. That's a silly one. And then when you need a free enterprise license for your enterprise databases, well, it's not free. You pay a little bit more for the enterprise versions, right, per hour. So while Amazon will get the license for you, you still have to pay for it. So C is really the only answer is when you want to, offload responsibilities. Okay. By the way, RDS, basically offloads a bunch of stuff, but it's not completely serverless. There are servers there, you just can't log into them. Okay, next question. Let's run through it. Let's get the answers. Okay. Seeing some things come in. See some D's, see some A's. All right, so we're talking about a highly available application. Meaning that availability, it's got redundancy, right? And some resiliency in the face of failure. So running spot instances for your EC2 workloads, which was the other popular choice, spot instances are very ephemeral, meaning they can be interrupted and Amazon can take them away from you with a 2-minute warning. So, I mean, I got to tell you, an application running on that is probably going to be extremely highly available, which I would actually agree with that because that means that application can withstand interruption, but it does mean the application is going to get interrupted. So I might question that, whether that's highly available or just it's resilient, it can withstand interruptions, right? SQS to decouple messages is an example of decoupling per the statement. And then running CloudFront is actually a way of increasing performance, right? Because it brings the files closer to the user that's consuming them. So I suspect that it's actually A, but let's check it out. Yeah. So remember, you've now got a database in each location. When you do this, meaning that you've got a primary database and a secondary database, and they're different availability zones. So if Amazon loses a data center, you can fall back to the other data center with your data. You can also do that to a certain degree with read replicas as well. Okay. Okay, here we go. Just read it and let's take a swag at the answers. Which of the following allows you to bring your own license? Okay, seen a lot of answers here. Seems like everyone's thoroughly convinced that it's Oracle. So not a lot of analysis here, right? You either kind of probably like know this or you don't, right? Now, obviously Postgres and MySQL are not going to be options, but MS SQL could be an option. So could Oracle. But yeah, just to say this, none of these other options allow a bring your own license model, only Oracle, just because Oracle is like that. They'll support it, right? So RDS can be under license included or bring your own license, right? So maybe they get volume discounts. There's all kind of reasons for that. Okay. All right, what are the benefits of using DynamoDB as your database? Let's select two. Good catch all, Greg. See, Chris, you put C and E. Okay. So Jonathan and Brandon, I see you both voted for A. And then E looks like it's the next most popular one. So Greg as well. Let's check it out. Okay. So Chris, just to ask this, what service offers 11 nines of durability other than DynamoDB? Do you know? Yeah, S3. Now, don't get me wrong, some of the DynamoDB and S3 share some of the same infrastructure, but DynamoDB doesn't offer 11 nines of availability, right? So it doesn't offer it. And actually, I don't know what DynamoDB's durability is, but I don't think I've ever seen it, honestly. DynamoDB is self-healing, which data is scanned for errors and repaired continuously. That's not technically accurate. And then performing complex queries and joins, that is not at all what DynamoDB is used for, obviously. That would be for an SQL database. Okay. So what is the name, by the way, of the sizing, like scale automatically called inside of S3? So I know about what do they call their like ability to scale up and down for S3 tables? Sorry, for DynamoDB tables. No, on demand, auto scaling, right? There's different modes they have. One of the modes has an upper and minimum limit, and another of the modes just like goes. It doesn't have an upper boundary or lower boundary. Okay. So all right. You can feel the gears starting to slow down. Which of the following services are not considered to be region specific? They're going to test you on this. Which ones are AZ specific, which are region specific, and which are globally available? So they are going to ask questions about this kind of thing. So what they're looking for is either something that's availability zone specific or something that's edge or something that's global, right? Okay. So Heather, let me ask you. You put A and B, right? Does Route 53 operate at the global, the edge, the region, or the AZ level?
I am not sure. I'm going through some of the test materials. And they were identified as not regional based services.
Okay, good. So good. That's great, right? So Route 53 is definitely global because it's DNS, right? So it's required DNS. And you put WAF, which the WAF is interesting because the WAF operates more as an edge device. So it actually operates off of the region from my understanding. Lambdas are region specific, VPCs are region specific, and so are trails, right? Because they are activated in regions. But WAF operates outside of that. So that's actually an edge location. So I could be wrong. Let's see what it says, right? Same thing. So a resource can be global, regional, or zonal. It could also be global, like outside of the region, right? So more edge oriented. There's actually only a handful of services that are considered global. This is it. IAM, STS, Route 53, CloudFront, and WAF. That's it. So memorize those 5 and you've got the global. Well, actually 6. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5. STS, by the way, is a secure token service. It's a subset of IAM. Most people don't know about that one. But Route 53 and CloudFront and WAF. So those are the only 5 services. Okay. Zonal service, sorry, those are only 5 global services. The only zonal services would be like EC2, EBS, right? Those are where you have a network card attached to it. It's going to run into a specific availability zone. Okay. So remember, IAM, STS, Route 53, CloudFront, and WAF are your 5 global services. Good. Okay, a softer one, right? About technology. Which advantage describes how easily deploy your application in multiple AWS regions with a few clicks? What is the, look at that and see what the answer is.
We can't,
Sorry. So a customer has a popular website that has millions of viewers. What is the best option if they have a read heavy database workload to increase the read throughput of the database? So notice, not like the previous question we had, which is write intensive. What's the best one for read intensive databases? Okay, this is really important to note, right? Because man, they're going to go for this a lot. So multi-AZ deployments do not increase performance. They actually only increase availability. So just know that right off the bat, is that even though it adds a second instance, that instance is not available for use. It actually, in some cases, can slow things down. But standby replicas are not really a thing. So, but read replicas, those are a thing. So D is definitely the answer in this case, because you can just add a read replica. it literally stands up another EC2, like an RDS EC2 instance, and then hooks it back to the primary system, and it extends data, like it replicates data over. So
So the replicas weren't good when it was a write scenario, but a read scenario, the replicas are good.
that's
Did I
right.
understand that correctly? Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because if it's a read heavy scenario, which honestly most RDBMSs should be heavy on reads, usually
Okay.
it's like an 80-20, then a read replica is going to be great.
Okay.
If it's a write intensive application writing that's causing the database to slow down, your only answer is to upsize the database. You got to make it bigger.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
With no SQL options, it doesn't work the same way. So that's really only with like RDS or like anything that uses relational databases. All right, we're almost there. Which payment plan out of the ones listed here is going to give you the largest discount when purchasing EC2 reserved instances? Remember, the more you're willing to give up front and the longer you're willing to pay for, the more they're willing to give you discount wise, right? So an all upfront payment for 3-year term, that means Amazon's going to be like, woo, we're getting our money now and you're going to pay us for 3 years. Absolutely. We love that. Their goal isn't necessarily to like make money. I mean, although they're there to make money, their goal is that how do they get predictable about the capacity they need? In other words, if a bunch of people pay for 3 years for a certain size of virtual machine, Amazon loves that because now they know what you need for 3 years. And so they don't have to like guess what customers are going to try to grab capacity wise. Yeah, there's some guessing involved. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. Good. So remember, by the way, you can do all upfront, no upfront, and partial upfront. The more money you give Amazon now, the more deeper discount they're going to give you. Obviously, the longer you commit. Be aware also that when you make reservations, it's by operating system, location, and size, right? And of course, duration, right? They're going to ask you how long do you want it for. Okay. Which of the following services combine 5G networks with AWS compute and storage services for the benefit of high performance mobile applications? This is actually one of AWS's other physical locations. So this is a little bit of a marketing question. Yeah, so Amazon has these locations called wavelengths, right? Which basically combines, like, it's for cellular, it's for 5G, right? So it combines all these things together with compute. So you can run applications in these wavelength locations and they're right next to the 5G tower, right? So think of it as like almost like CloudFront for 5G applications. It's pretty cool. So that one you just kind of have to just know. Which AWS service will allow you to serve your dynamic web content to users globally? Okay, seen a variety of answers, right? Dynamic web content. So serve your dynamic web content, right? So there's only really one service that will allow you to serve your dynamic web content to users globally. Because remember, we just listed all the global services, right? It was IAM, STS, Route 53, WAF, and then CloudFront. But the only one of those services that serves content at all globally is going to be CloudFront. Route 53's job is to do DNS. That's how we resolve domain names like www.amazon.com to an IP address, right? So CloudFront's going to be the answer because it's the only one that can serve content. Most people think CloudFront can only serve out static content, and the truth is that it can serve out both static and dynamic. Now, is it better at doing static content? Yeah, everybody is actually, but it can do dynamic content. So remember, some of the previous stuff you learned about which services are global can also help you exclude things. Load balancers aren't global. S3 is regional. Route 53 is global, but it's like I said, it's a domain name server. Its job is not to serve out content. Okay. All right, which of the following services should you provision in your local data center if you want additional storage space without having to migrate data? Okay. See a bunch of people putting the storage gateway. Brian Lepak, let me ask you this. What is the storage gateway used for? Where does that run at?
I'm not sure, honestly. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
So no, that's great. That's the perfect place to start. So the storage gateway is a virtual machine that runs on premise in like a VMware environment. So it's a virtual machine that links back to AWS. So what's interesting about it is that it can act as a file server or a volume server or a tape server to front AWS like storage services inside your data center. So it's actually a pretty cool little appliance. So, but it does actually run on premise, but it allows you to pretend that S3 and Glacier are inside your data center. So, but it does require VMware to run. So that's really what it's for. The rest of these, by the way, either don't have enough storage or they're actually like data transfer, data manipulation tools. So this is a hybrid cloud storage service, right? This can use NFS, SMB, or iSCSI to share out either tape drives, volumes, or files. And it basically connects to a variety of backend services, but all related to storage. Here's the three flavors of file gateway, volume gateway, and tape gateway. Pretty cool. Yeah. So it says it provides a hardware appliance hosted on premise. That's not necessarily true. It can be virtual machine actually. Okay. A storage gateway. You haven't seen it before, might want to dig it up. Okay, what's a good DR recovery precaution if you're launching a dynamic web application with mission critical workloads that need to be available all the time? Hmm. The answer here is actually more likely in the answer than it is in the question. Good. Looks like a pretty common consensus that D is the answer, right? And I think the answer kind of gave it away. Launching in 2 AZs to prevent a regional outage, that's not going to happen. Launching applications to prevent in 2 different regions to prevent downtime, that makes more sense, right? Because if there's a regional outage, this is what can happen here. Okay. Running applications but keeping data local, that's not going to work. You're still going to have an outage in that case. Keeping backup in 2 different S3 buckets, well, that's a regional service. So that's not going to help either, right? Okay. All right. I talked about this just a little bit earlier, right? But look at this question here. Good. Remember, I made the distinction that while both enterprise and business plans have an hour response for production down systems, I said there was only one system, one support level, by the way, that supported a 15-minute response time. And that was indeed the highest one, which is enterprise. Good. One of the few things we had to memorize, right? They're all pretty much the same, except when it comes to production system down versus business critical systems, right? Good. Okay. What is the right arrangement of infrastructure components according to their geographical coverage size? Meaning from largest unit inside AWS to medium-sized unit to smallest unit of footprint in terms of like servers and stuff. Like, how do we go from big to smallest inside of AWS? So which would we choose here? Good. Okay. Seems like there's a good consensus here. Is that regions are the largest, AZs are the medium, and edges are the smallest? Let's find out. Sounds like that's right, though. Right? So regions are the big data centers made up of availability zones, which are the next biggest. And then you got edge locations, which are really just single servers or racks of servers located near major ISPs all over the world. So Amazon might have 30 regions with availability zones in them, but they have 300 plus edge locations. Good. All right, we're gonna keep going. We're almost there. 10 more minutes and we'll stop. Okay. All right, customers using S3 to store sprites of game characters. Now I gotta tell you, the language here is a disaster. Sprites mean images. So they're storing images of game characters, okay? When players retrieve these images, they are temporarily stored on the player's computer. The images are stored in a standard S3 storage class. Which of the options would you recommend for them to optimize storage costs? Okay. Looks like there was some consensus for this one as well, at least a little bit. So it said, hey, let's have the customers upload the sprites directly to standard infrequent access, or add a lifecycle policy to move sprites to S3 standard access after the customer uploads them, right? So it seemed like B was the general consensus. Let's see. Does that make sense? Makes sense to me. Why would I put it in standard and then immediately move it over when I'm going to pay standard rates for that upload and then have it moved over afterwards? Let's just stick it directly in infrequent access. Glacier isn't necessarily going to work because you can't access it directly in Glacier. It has to be restored and then you can access it. And then compress the spikes to reduce storage consumption. No. By the way, you can actually get S3 to do a little, or sorry, CloudFront to do storage, compression if you want to. So you put CloudFront in front of your S3 bucket, you could do it that way. But the answer is that, well, if it's going to land on infrequent access anyway, just have it copied directly to infrequent access. Okay, sorry, just needed to turn off something. Okay, good. So you guessed correctly, or sorry, you knew this, is go directly to the infrequent access storage. Okay. You've got a number of on-premise data centers that have been collecting dust over the years, several servers that are in your on-premise data centers, that is. What's the benefit of moving to the cloud in this case? A little bit of a fuzzy question. So this is kind of like speaking, it is a bad question, Chris, I gotta tell you, I agree. This is speaking to which of the 6 benefits really does this do, like provide for you? So, you know, the problem is that you've got servers sitting there that you've already purchased and they're not being used. So your return on investment is horrible. So physical servers are managed and maintained by AWS for you. I think that is the benefit of moving to the cloud, right? But it's not really what they're talking about. It's not one of the 6 benefits. AWS has automated services. That's not really going to make sense. Like we know that. That's fine. The ability to pay for only what you use, or the ability to provision resources only when you need them. So in this case, if you're not using these systems, by the way, they're just collecting dust, right? Which I guess is a phrase that means they're not being used. So in this case, you're still paying for them, even though they're not being used, right? But I kind of like, which is it, right? So let's I'm just going to take a swag here and just say, is it A, right? But honestly, I wouldn't get this question right. Well, obviously I didn't, right? So the ability to provision resources only when you need them, right? This one is a really tough question to answer, right? Because it's like, dust has a negative impact on machines too. Thanks, Corey, for being so understanding. So this one is really hard to qualify because like I said, I would have thought, okay, well, we're not using it. So then we're paying for it and we're not using it. Or is it that I provisioned servers in the past, right? And then now that I don't need them, I can give them back, right? Which means either way, you're still paying for it. So does imply that you only pay for what you use. So let's just write this one off to like a not great question. That happens. Not all questions are awesome. Okay. What is the lowest support plan that allows an unlimited number of technical support cases to be open? First of all, you got to find the plan that allows you to open support cases, which could be all of them. And then which one allows you to open unlimited support cases? I see C's. CC's coming in. Let's see. So what's interesting is that with basic, you can't open support cases, not really. With developer, you can open support cases and you can do an unlimited number of them, right? Okay. Yeah, so notice that the basic plan offers support for account and billing questions and service limit increases. So I remember opening service like tickets, but they were at a basic account, but they were only for service limit increases or if I had an issue with my billing. That's it. There was no technical support provided at all, right? So it really is developer that gives you unlimited access to support cases, right? Cool. All right, we're almost there. 3 more minutes. Stick with me. What's the primary benefit of creating a scalable system? So a system that embodies scalability. Yep. So varying loads of work. I think that's pretty good, actually. Very clear-cut question for this one. Good. All right. Yeah, the rest doesn't actually make sense, right? Costing less than usual. I mean, you can save some costs, but you can also grow costs if you're going to scale up to meet customer demand. Able to fail over gracefully. That's not implied, actually, right? Are easily targeted by malicious attacks. No, that's not implied either, actually, by scalability. So this is the only one that makes sense. Okay. Which of the following situations is it better to use roles rather than users? And you have to know the tagline that AWS grants to roles, which is we want to use them for temporary access. So what does that mean? Roles can also be used with things other than users, right? Okay, got some options. All right, when you want to provide permissions to do certain actions, that looks good. When you have outside entities that need to perform specific actions to your account. I mean, it can't be a GUI, right? Because that's not really what a role provides. Employees who constantly need access to your resources, well, that's not temporary. That sounds persistent. And when you need an admin to handle the account for you, that just sounds like a weird statement, actually. So let's check, because it looks like, B and Ds, I saw those up there. They're looking pretty good, right? So roles are designed to assign to services. And then when you need like other AWS accounts to do things to your account, then this is great. Plus you can create service roles, which enable that as well. So roles are perfect for this. Remember, users, groups, and roles are the 3 entities inside of AWS in which you can assign permissions. Okay. So roles are really built for temporary access, cross-account access, and service access. So, okay, you know what? Let's stop there, actually. All right. So we have the last 4 minutes. Does anyone have any questions about anything logistically that's been on your mind? Anything we didn't cover? We just spent, what, like 3 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes going through a bunch of exam questions. We covered everything from certification to the exam itself, all related to practice questions, anything else. And then of course, getting on hands-on experience. Does anyone have anything they need to give voice to before we close for the day?
Yeah, you said that these questions are going to be slightly different than what you would find on exams. Meaning maybe worded better, or that, or I don't know, less you know,
Ambiguity?
yeah,
Uncertainty?
I mean, more definitive, like, I mean, you know.
Nope. No, they're still going to be fuzzy, right? These are remarkably accurate question asks, right? You'd be surprised at some of the ambiguity of some of the questions. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not going to get any worse than this, but like this is pretty standard when you take the exam. So, and you know, some of the wording might be switched around, but you know, for the most part, this is a pretty good feel for how the exam's going to go.
So I have a question about this set. So like once you finish going through the entire set, does it actually reshuffle the questions or change them in any way, or will it just be the same?
That's a good question, actually. I don't think it can reshuffle because it would have to reshuffle all of them, if that makes any sense. So,
okay.
right, because you know, there's a pool of them, right? So does it reshuffle the order of the questions? I believe it does, although I was shocked earlier because we got the same question that I saw earlier today. So I guess the
okay.
answer to that, Stanley, is I don't know. I feel like it's reshuffled, but I haven't checked that.
Okay.
Good. Okay. So give me about like 24 hours, maybe 48, but usually 24 hours. I'll get the recordings up and then we'll share just a brief email with all of you saying, hey, here's the links. Here's the things we talked about. Here's a playlist that includes both logistics and our run against the exam questions. If you have anything come up, just let us know, either post in a Basecamp or send either Greg or myself or support at WebH Solutions an email, probably in that order, like Greg, myself, and support. We'll probably figure it out from there. Regardless, we'll redirect you to whoever you need to talk to. Okay. So have a great evening. Thank you so much for being here. And then, you know, remember the pasting that I pasted earlier around the evaluation. I also send you a follow-up link, but it'd be so great if you could just give us feedback about what you want to change, improve, more if you want to see. It really helps us, and by turn, it helps you. So let us know.
Also, feel free to let us know how you do on the test. Pass or fail, we'd be excited to hear as a group how you're doing. I am taking the test, so I'm glad I have a double shot voucher because I may fail the first time. So anyway, and anything we can do to help you pass, certainly let us know. That's legal.
I didn't realize we were adding that qualifier in there. I'll be throwing that in from now on. That's good.
All right.
All right.
Good evening. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a fabulous evening. I'm gonna hang around for one more minute. Otherwise, feel free to drop. Let us know and let me know if you have anything.
Hey, Michael, it's Heather. First, thank you. This has been really, really helpful. I didn't know if you'd heard back on the tutorials dojo question.
Wait. Oh, no, actually. So let's see. Greg picked that up, and so he's following up on it. And since he has your email address,
Perfect.
he'll take care of it. But what will
Okay.
happen, just so you know, is it'll take about 24 hours just because they're in the Philippines and that's their process. And so
Yep.
you should get an email that says, hey, you are now registered for a practice exam.
Okay. Worst case, I just pay the $12, but I won't get to it for another 24. So if we can get it, that'd be awesome.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, you got it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking. Sorry, I forgot to follow up with you.
Oh, it's okay. Thanks. Have a good night.
All right. You too.